Hello, and welcome to episode 2 of the Napoleonic Order, a world where France won the Napoleonic Wars. Last episode, we saw France invade Britain, mostly occupy it, and then some stuff went down in Spain. Yeah, like Trafalgar being a French victory and such and such. At the end of that video, I think I remember mentioning that Russia, Prussia, and Austria joined the coalition and declared war on France, starting the War of the Sixth Coalition. Now, I'm not sure if I actually said that, but that is exactly what happens. So, let's just get right into it. The year is about, is 1814, around, the middle of the year, and, this is all that remains of the UK. Yeah, this is all that remains of the UK. All of this is a French occupation. This is basically all that remains of it, except for, Gibraltar and bloomin', Malta. Yeah, with Malta essentially being where the royal family didn't flee to Malta. They went to Brazil, but, some elements of the British government ended up in Malta, declared themselves the new British authorities in the name of the monarchy. So, now just before Britain fell, just before Inverness came under the control of French forces, the British government sent a request to Prussia, Russia, and Austria, desperately begging for them to enter the war, so that they could distract the Napoleonic forces in Britain and prevent them from invading further in, and hopefully allow the British government to begin a counteroffensive. Now, this arrived too late, but Prussia, Russia, and Austria, all angry at having lost land to Napoleon and being extremely vengeful against him, they decided to accept the offer. And now Napoleon has to deal with 3 new members of the coalition at his doorstep. While Napoleonic advances have occurred in Spain and Portugal, due to the weakening of the British armies there, due to, Britain's still fighting back, very well. Not Britain, the Spanish resistance. Yeah, British forces in Spain and the Spanish resistance are actually fighting back pretty decently against France. And, let's just see what happens. Prussia, Russia, and Austria soon declare war on France and begin their invasions of Poland. Now, France is not very happy about this, so it's essentially a conflict across Europe now. So, with the War of the Sixth Coalition now beginning, France decides to focus on Prussia first, but before Napoleon can actually get there, Russian and Prussian forces begin an invasion into Poland, occupying Kaunas, known at the time as Kovno, and ultimately overrunning Lithuania, or the Lithuanian regions of the Duchy of Warsaw. Warsavian forces attempt to fight back, but Prussian forces, splitting with forces that begin to besiege Danzig, begin to push down into Warsaw. However, now, the Prussian forces begin an invasion of the Confederation of the Rhine. They begin attacking Schwerin and begin attacking Braunschweig and Hanover. However, Napoleon, he decides to come in with guns blazing. He gets to Braunschweig and begins a battle against Prussia. It goes very terribly for Prussia. Napoleonic forces, they easily push in. they easily invade Prussia. Yeah. The Confederation of the Rhine forces, along with Napoleonic forces, capture Dessau and begin their attacks on Berlin. With the siege of Berlin, the Prussian royal family heads for Königsberg, arrives there, and with the fall of Berlin, just weeks later, French forces begin to head down into Silesia. Along with Polish military forces, Breslau becomes controlled by France. Massive offensives across Silesia occur. French forces reach the northern Austrian borders, however they don't cross just yet, wanting to focus on Prussia. Things aren't going well. The Confederation of the Rhine forces, now taking back over the supply routes, they kind of just savage Prussian supply lines and ultimately recapture Schwerin and encircle this entire force, which gets trapped on this island, and they're forced to surrender. Along with that, Confederation forces actually advance deep into Prussia, advancing along the shores. However, Napoleon's one step ahead of them, and links up with his allies, and then he heads directly into Confederation-held territory and begins their invasion of Prussia. He helps break the siege of Danzig, and thereafter he effectively cuts off Prussia from the rest of its advances. The advances into Poland effectively fall apart as the Warsavian forces push back, and soon Prussian forces are pushed completely back. With Prussia now effectively split into a series of enclaves, let's see how the conflict in Austria's going. Ouch. Now, French forces actually managed to establish a secure perimeter around this area, while Austria manages to make advances into Tyrol, even advancing into Italy a bit. This doesn't really change anything. France kind of just laughs it off, and they're like, well, that's really cute, Austria. You think you can actually do something. They're kind of like that. But like, Austria's kind of relentless. Like, they attack Passau in the Confederation of the Rhine, and their forces march out of Silesia and besiege Coburg. With news of this, Napoleon decides to round back down south and invades Austria, beginning an attack towards Vienna. Along with this, another attack breaks the perimeter around this area and invades into Austria. They capture Budapest, and soon after these two contingents of French soldiers link up and encircle Vienna. And a massive firefight occurs at the city, but not many people are lost, as they just kind of capture the Austrian royal family and put them under house arrest. And with that, French forces capture Prague, and Austria has essentially ceased to be a successful fighting force. They aren't exactly doing very well anymore. With that, Austria kinda doing shit. Austria's kind of doing badly. Wait, no, sorry, didn't mean to swear. Austria's kind of doing extremely poorly, because even the Warsavians are pushing them back at this point. Even Warsaw is pushing them back. It's not going well for the Austrians. The siege of Lemberg occurs and take the city, and all of the remaining Austrian forces in Silesia Galicia just kind of fall. They just kind of fold. And Polish forces even make another advance into Prussian territory. They recapture this bit of the territory, although they are unable to recapture Kovno. Then Polish forces attack Kovno, and a Lithuanian uprising occurs, which sees Lithuanians revolt in favor of Napoleon, and declared themselves under Napoleon's protection. Like, Napoleon just sees this as really good because this just means he has to fight less of the Russian Empire, which is pretty good for him. And like, Lithuania sees kind of these areas, and joins Napoleon's invasion. So yeah. Meanwhile, what's going on in Spain at this point? Well, I'll tell you. Yeah, that's what's happening. Oof. Ouch. Ooh. That's gonna leave a mark. So, yes. The Spanish resistance to Napoleon kind of just folds in this region. The Balearic Islands are seized by Napoleonic naval forces. And, yeah. And, as for Portugal, that happens. With the French divisions in Spain managing to capture Lisbon. With the fall of Lisbon, Napoleon reinstates a treaty that was made during like the 1808-ish to divide up Portugal. And with its revival, Portuguese forces begin to fight back, but it's little use. Cadiz and Gibraltar fall, and Seville is secured, so yeah, Napoleon's kind of doing good against these forces. Speaking of which, the Confederation of the Rhine completely destroys Austria's advances into Bamberg and Coburg, as well as retaking Passau. So yeah, sucks for Austria, kind of, but so with that, yeah, so yeah, essentially only the only coalition member at this point that can even fight back, against the that can even kind of fight back against Napoleon at this point is Russia. And even then, they essentially have to caretake all of the Prussians and Austrians that are fleeing into their territory. Because, like, well, it isn't really the Prussian population. Like, basically, it's just the governments of these two countries fleeing into Russia. And even then, the Prussian government doesn't even get there because they get cut off by Lithuanians and just get massacred. Which, yeah. Sorry, but... But regardless, Lithuania advances heavily against the corner. Advances heavily. With that, Russia, yeah, France decides it's gonna end this. Like, they essentially decide that this will be the end game of the war. Königsberg falls, and soon French forces enter Lithuanian territory. Soon they aid Lithuania, and with the aid of Lithuanian forces, advance into Courland. So, soon Riga falls to the French, and, yeah, pretty much things are just going extremely poor. Lithuanian forces even push back a bit of the Prussian forces, which kind of just shows how weakened the Prussians are at this point. Yeah, it really shows how Prussia really fell off after Frederick the Great. Well, they didn't really fall off after Frederick the Great. They kind of came back after the Napoleonic Wars, but during like the Fourth Coalition, they kind of just got completely wrecked. So, yeah. But regardless, French forces take Riga and begin advancing along the Baltic shoreline. They advance into Reval, and soon they prepare to attack Helsinki. The attack occurs and Helsinki falls, as French forces actually manage to encircle the northern area of Petrograd, or rather St. Petersburg. With that, things aren't going very well for these people. And with that, St. Petersburg falls. Well, it doesn't fall, it gets encircled and essentially pushed back to the city walls, which is kind of trash for the Russians, but still. Now, with the Napoleonic strategy of, instead of heading straight for Moscow, moving along the Baltic coast and then capturing St. Petersburg, then moving towards Moscow, Napoleon does that. He captures Novgorod and Pskov, and there's not a lot to say at this point. Like, Russia's just kind of screwed. They're just kind of done. Like, Prussia's just kind of done for. But like, Lithuanian forces advance. They capture Minsk. Like, that's something. But regardless of any of this, one interesting thing happens during this time. French forces advance from Poland and arrive in Minsk before arriving out of Minsk and linking up with the Napoleonic spearhead. Next, they advance on Moscow. Soon after, this timeline's equivalent of the Battle of Borodino occurs, and it's French victory, like the Battle of Borodino. However, in this timeline, it's actually not a Pyrrhic victory, as they actually capture Moscow before it's burnt down. With Moscow captured, there's basically no hope for Russia left, as their two biggest industrial centres, or rather biggest urban centres, have fallen to Napoleon. French forces advance south out of Minsk and capture Kiev before advancing into Poltava. Soon after, they advance south and capture Rostov, and by this point the war just drags on through 1816 and into early 1817. However, as Crimea falls, the Russian government finally realizes that there is no hope for them left. And just as Odessa and this area falls over, along with Chisinau, Russia asks for a ceasefire, and France accepts. With this, the War of the Sixth Coalition ends in a French victory. It only took like a few years. Arguably, it was the longest war the Brits have. It's obviously one of the longest fought wars that Napoleon has ever done. But still, it is a victory nonetheless. Just before Russia's conditional surrender, Voronezh is captured by French forces. Now, let's take a look at that peace deal that ends this whole affair once and for all. As you can see, the borders have changed. Now, before you say anything, no, the year is not meant to be 1823, it's meant to be 1817. But, like, the borders in this timeline's 1817 and this timeline's 1823 are basically exactly the same, so we're just gonna roll with it. So, first off, the French Empire gains territory from Britain. Cornwall is fully annexed into France as a department, or province of sorts, as well as the Channel Islands. In Spain, the Balearic Islands are annexed, and 3 kingdoms are formed out of Portugal. These kingdoms are the Duchy of Portugal, the Kingdom of Northern Lusitania, and the Principality of the Algarves. Now, Northern Lusitania and the Algarves are ruled by Spanish-friendly nobility, but Portugal is ruled by some French collaborator Portuguese person. I don't know who, just someone. Just some Portuguese guy who collaborated with the French. Who knows? Maybe it's like the mayor of Lisbon or something. Like, who knows? But regardless of that, that's the peace deal in Iberia. We've already covered what happened in Britain during the first episode, so let's see what happens. Now, Sweden. Now the Swedes, they kinda don't get much. They get a bit of Finland, but that's about it. Like, that's about it for, like, the Swedes. As for Ukraine, they get massive amounts of territory. Not only do they get Moldavia, what do they call it? Bessarabia? Yeah. They also get control of this whole region of the Don, and get control of massive regions of this area. In fact, they're nearly as big as the French Empire's mainland territories. But you know, the Kingdom of Ukraine is ruled by a Napoleon-friendly leader, and a lot of their country is, like, really underdeveloped, so they're not as powerful as France. As for Prussia, they just got completely decimated. Well, they did gain Danzig, because Napoleon wasn't completely unreasonable with them. They lost Berlin, they lost Silesia, and they lost a bit of their territories here. As for Poland, as for the Duchy of Warsaw, they're renamed to the Duchy of Poland, and they gain Galicia. Austria's put under a puppet monarch, which is friendly to France, probably one of the nobility from this region, from, like, Austria. Maybe it's even a Hungarian nobleman's put on the throne, but who knows. But, like, France gains a bit of territory here. They do lose a bit of territory here, but, like, they give some of their Tyrolean areas to the Rhine Confederation, and the Swiss Confederation is, like, still a French puppet. As for Italy, Pontecorvo, Naples, the other town here around this region, and Sicily are all unified with the Kingdom of Italy to create a full-on Kingdom of Italy. Along with it, Sardinia has been annexed into France, and France has secured its control over this Rome area. As for Lithuania, they're much smaller than Ukraine, but they aren't that. But, like, they have two major cities: Vilnius, or Wilno, and Minsk. They're decently sized. They're nearly as big as their northern neighbour, the Livonians, also known as Ostlandia, the German nobility leading this region. But, like, Livonia also gains, like, this region of Finland around Helsinki, and as for, like, actually, have I covered everything in this peace deal that ended this war? I think I have, actually. Yeah, I have, actually. So, yeah, I think that's where we wrap it. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video. Just like I said last video, this isn't meant to be offensive or anything, and like, if this is too unrealistic for you, then I'm not sure. Like, maybe it's like watch some other video about Napoleon winning the Napoleonic Wars. Like, I'm sure there's some other videos about that happening elsewhere on YouTube, so go and watch it. Go and watch them. Like, you know what? Watch other creators' stuff. Like, if you don't like my stuff, then why don't you go watch other creators' stuff? Like, you know, watch the stuff that you like. But anyways, with that, France has won the Napoleonic Wars officially. The scenario's first 2 episodes have ended, and consider the first 2 episodes like the prologue to what happens later. Consider it like the prologue to the series. So, with that, I hope you enjoyed the video, and have a nice day. Bye-bye!